Now, I just did a video talking about the first family to come forward to plead guilty and their role that they played in with the college admission, the Isaacsons. Now, this one right here takes the cake because this one right here is the reason why we know about the college admission scam, scandal, whatever you want to call it. Meet Morrie Tobin. He is a dad of a student who goes to Yale University. And according to this title, he is the one that tipped off the authorities as to what was going on with how these parents, these business people, and these celebrities have been paying this William Rick Singer and everyone else he had on the payroll with getting their dumbass kids into college. We were trying to figure out how did this get out there, because we never knew. Even when I did the 50 names, I think his name did come up, but they didn't specify that it was him that tipped off the authorities for this story to blow up the way that it did. So, ladies and gentlemen, you are now looking at the man who is responsible for why the world knows about this story. And now I'm going to read this article coming from the Wall Street Journal. And it's crazy because this article was posted on March 14th. And I didn't even know that he was the one that tipped them off. And it's crazy because they must have just slipped this in under the radar. But let's just read it anyway. The tipster who led federal authorities to the biggest college admission scam they have ever prosecuted was Morrie Tobin, a Los Angeles financial executive who was being investigated in a securities fraud case. Sounds like he was doing some dirt himself. Mr. Tobin was being questioned in an alleged pump and dump investment scheme in which people conspired to inflate the price of a stock so they can sell it at a profit. When he offered a tip to federal authorities in an effort to obtain leniency. Mr. Tobin, who attended Yale University, told investigators that the head women's soccer coach at Yale had sought a bribe in return for getting his daughter into the Ivy League school program, a person familiar with the investigation said. So basically, this guy, like I said, was doing his own dirt. They caught up with him to get him on the dirt he was doing, but he said, I will tell you what's been really going on behind the scenes that's bigger than what I've been doing in order to get leniency on whatever kind of charges you'll throw at me for this. So basically, in the detective world, they'll call that a mole. But in our world, we call that being a snitch. That's basically what he is. That tip led investigators to unravel a wide-ranging scheme in which dozens of wealthy parents allegedly paid a college consultant to facilitate cheating on entrance exams and falsifying student athletic profiles. It also involves allegedly bribing coaches at schools including the University of Southern California, Georgetown University, and Stanford University to take their children on as recruited athletes, a near guaranteed way of being accepted. That's why well, first off, something would have told me something was off about it when all these kids came onto this program and not one of them was on an academic scholarship. Mr. Tobin wasn't charged in relation to the alleged college admission scheme. Interesting. He is awaiting sentencing in the securities fraud case in which he signed a plea agreement in November. So look at that. You heard that, right? So they're still going to get him on what he did before, but he wanted to leave unscathed from the college admissions part, and it looks like it worked. To help investigators catch Yale's women's soccer coach Rudy Meredith, who was the black guy, Mr. Tobin wore a wire to a meeting in a Boston hotel room with Mr. Meredith in April 2018. Now, how about that? The way that he exposed it was through the black guy involved, not William Rick Singer, who was the ringleader. So they found all of this out through the black guy by him planting a wire on himself to catch the black guy in the act. How about that? At that meeting, Mr. Meredith said that he could designate Mr. Tobin's daughter as a recruit for the team in exchange for $450,000. Later that month, Mr. Meredith agreed to cooperate with federal investigators. Prosecutors say Mr. Meredith worked with William Rixinger, the college consultant at the Center for the Admissions Cheating and Bribery Scheme, in January 2018. Mr. Meredith helped get the daughter of another California family into Yale by pretending she was a soccer player. That family paid Mr. Singer $1.2 million. According to the affidavit, Mr. Meredith's share was $400,000, and the family was not identified. Mr. Meredith's attorney didn't respond for requests for comment. He agreed to plead guilty to 2 counts of wire fraud in the case. Mr. Tobin, who used to live in Canada, has close ties to Yale. He attended the university in the 1980s, playing hockey for the school before transferring to the University of Vermont. One daughter, Rachel, graduated from Yale in 2015, according to an alumni directory. 2 of his other daughters are currently a senior and junior there, respectively. In the securities fraud case, Mr. Tobin and 3 others were charged in November. The SEC says they concealed from investors beginning in 2013 Mr. Tobin's control of 2 public companies, which are Environmental Packaging Technology Holdings Incorporated and Cure Pharmaceutical Holding Corporation. Mr. Tobin then sold his shares without registering the sales with the SEC, without disclosing his stakes in the companies, and without complying with SEC limitations on stock sales by the company insiders. Mr. Tobin's stock was transferred to 2 offshore asset managers who sold millions of dollars of his shares to investors, according to the SEC's complaint. What appeared to be ordinary trading by unaffiliated investors was actually a massive dump of shares by a company insider and his team seeking to profit at the expense of defrauded investors. Mr. Tobin agreed to plead guilty to 1 count of conspiracy to commit securities fraud and 1 count of securities fraud, according to a plea agreement filed in the federal court in November. He is scheduled to be sentenced in June. And I bet you he's not going to get that much time. But let that have been a black person that did everything that this guy did and then some, and probably not even an ounce of what he did, they would have gave him the whole bookshelf. Prosecutors are recommending penalties, including the forfeiture of $4 million. Authorities said was obtained in the offenses and 36 months of supervised release. There you go. Prosecutors said that the amount is at the low end of the sentencing guidelines and reflects Mr. Tobin's prompt acceptance of personal responsibility in the case, but the plea agreement doesn't mention his role in exposing the college admissions fraud. And all this guy had to do was be a snitch. That's all he had to do. So now we know who's the one responsible for getting that thing out there. And like I said, it's interesting that he had the wire on and talked to Rudy Meredith, who was the only black person who was involved closely with William Rixinger, and which is how they blew this whole thing up. He got it through the black guy. Now it makes you wonder if that investigation about what he had going on with the security fraud thing, would he have ever come out and admitted this information that he said? My guess is hell no. He would have kept that to himself and somebody else would have revealed it. But the thing is, the fact that he already had dirt attached to his name, and it seems like he's probably the only one, seemingly, that's why they attached to him. And then he used what he knew to go and infiltrate, so to speak, and expose the whole thing in order for him to get leniency. What people will do in order to save their own ass. But I'm actually kind of glad that he did it, because I wanted to know who was the one that was responsible for it, because we never knew who it was, but now we do. Y'all let me know what y'all think about this down in the comments, and I'll talk to you in the next one.